The limitation right now is not the technology. It's our imaginations for how to use the technology. So that's a big part of what we do with our customers, because we go in and we show them this stuff now. And, I'll be in a big conference room with people and I'll show them what's possible. And I might as well be like a magician sawing a woman in half in a conference room. No, I feel like David Copperfield or some famous magician up there when I'm doing these things, because the amount of knowledge and the amount of experience that SMBs have in this space is very, very limited in most cases.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Small Business Black Holes, the podcast that shines a light on the hidden challenges of scaling a business. Hosted by Alan Pentz, each episode explores the critical shifts entrepreneurs make as they grow beyond $1 million, $5 million, even $30 million, and move from brute force to sustainable professional growth. Stay with us as we uncover what it really takes to escape the black holes of business and scale with intention.
All right, we are back on the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alex Heublein, who is the Chief Innovation Officer for NetSurit's down in Atlanta. Alex, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
That's great. So tell us just quick rundown of what NetSurit does, so we baseline people of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're a global IT managed service provider. So we focus on the small medium business world, anywhere from let's say 25 to 2,500 employee companies. And we do IT managed services, sort of outsourcing IT departments to us, usually small and medium businesses. A lot of them don't even have an IT department, but the ones that do, it's usually my cousin Vinny or whomever does their IT for them, which, probably works for a while, but it's harder to do that in this day and age. The technology's gotten a lot more complicated. We also do manage cybersecurity services, and then we have a sort of a third major line of products that we have, which are what we call Innovate. And it's really about bringing AI and automation technologies sort of down market into the SMB space to really help them do digital transformation and really transform their business and harness the power of these new technologies.
That's cool. So what, any kind of size markers you can give us, employees, revenue for NetSurit?
Yeah, so we're right at about 500 employees. The company was started about 25 years ago in South Africa, interestingly. And then a few years ago, we expanded into the US. We've made several acquisitions. I think we're up to 8 or 9 acquisitions at this point in the US. So we've grown our presence in the US and also grown our geographic footprint in the US, both through organic growth, but also through acquisitive growth as well.
Cool. Do you guys have like a financial partner as part of that? Or are you doing it out of cash flow? How's that work?
So yeah, we do have a financial partner. We're not we do. We've got a lot of different financial partners that we use to make those acquisitions. But we're not owned by any other company or
So you're not
anything like that at this point.
PE kind of thing.
We're not PE backed at this point. So yeah, so it's been good. We've had a lot of great expansion. We've acquired some really great companies in the U.S. So we've got a footprint up in all the way from Maine to Connecticut to New York to Texas to New Mexico and also Washington State. So we've kind of expanded our coast to coast geographic presence over the last couple of years pretty dramatically.
That's cool. So I love hearing about companies that do acquisitions on their own, right? So I assume you use cash flow, debt, maybe other mechanisms, and not going with a PE partner, right? It's an interesting challenge. So any learnings from that? Like, because you're putting a lot more on the line, right? You're risking your own money in effect, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. We have you do have to be careful with it, right? So I think we've done it very intelligently, right? We haven't tried to make 10 acquisitions all at once. We've done this over the course of several years. We kind of started out in New York with a couple of acquisitions and then grew that presence. And then we started just expand out geographically after a few years of that. So we kind of established that beachhead and then kind of moved out geographically into markets, because the managed service provider market, there's a reasonably high degree of affinity for local markets, right? People want to know that if we're going to outsource our IT to a company, that they've got people in our local market that can come on service equipment, come meet with us, come, they kind of have that feel for it. Not all of them, but most of our customers want to know that we've got boots on the ground in their particular market.
Yeah, yeah. So it makes sense. So were you with the company when it was South African as well?
No, I joined about 18 months ago. So we had, in fact, I joined right after we did 3 acquisitions to kind of expand the geographic presence. And then we did 2 more last year to move into the Connecticut and Texas markets as well. So it's interesting though. You try to, you go through and you try to integrate all these companies, and that of course has its own set of challenges, but overall it's gone very well, very, very well for the number of acquisitions we've made over the last couple of years.
That's great. So I guess the owners or founders or whatever got to a point where they're like, hey, we want to get into the US market. And then they basically said, hey, going in and trying to set up some new operation, given your local kind of emphasis, didn't make sense. So you're doing growth by acquisition strategy. How big, do you know how big they were when they started, when you guys started doing acquisitions like that?
I don't actually. I don't know. I don't have the numbers. They kind of started several years before I joined, but it's steady progress. We're doing it, I think, in a very intelligent way. We're not just trying to grow at all costs, but we're making acquisitions that really fit our culture. We have a very strong culture, and our sort of cultural tagline is supporting the dreams of the doers, which doesn't always roll off the tongue, but it's really all about, how do we support our people to achieve their dreams, and then how do we support our customers to achieve their dreams as well, whether those dreams are financial dreams or business outcomes that they want to achieve. We have a very, very strong cultural fit with the acquisitions that we make. So that's one of the big things we look at is, are they going to integrate into our culture? Do they sort of share that passion and that vision for helping customers, take what they're doing to the next level? So that's a big factor.
Yeah, and it's a pretty competitive acquisition space, right? I assume like there's a lot of private equity rooting around in the MSP market.
There's a lot of consolidation going on in the market right now, and I'd say it's probably been going on for the last 3 or 4 years. If you were to rewind 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, there were, countless managed service providers, everything from, 3 guys and a dog kind of, because the barriers to entry of getting into this market aren't super high. You don't have to have a huge capital investment to get into this type of business. So now we're sort of seeing that natural roll up. When you've got lots of players, there's thousands of players in this market globally. We're starting to see that sort of natural roll up happen within the industry.
Yeah, that's cool. Um, Excellent. So shifting a little bit, um, it is interesting to hear about all the different trends going on in the space. But to me, one of the most interesting things is you guys are sort of ground zero on the automation AI into the small and medium enterprise, right? And so we were talking a little bit before, I'm tracking that. How is AI and automation coming in to businesses, right? So you're seeing managed service providers, you're seeing, people are hiring outside companies. It's coming in through their software stack, with their software program sticks the little star button in it. And then they're buying increasingly it sounds like they're going to have more, I was just reading about like a field sales AI company that's coming in and like analyzing all your sales calls using AI. So they're new solutions, right? So talk a little bit about how you guys got into that part of it.
Yeah, but we've had a business, this Innovate business we've actually had for several years. It actually came through an acquisition of ours. And so it started out with automation technologies. How do we use technologies like Microsoft Power Automate, for instance, and their Power Platform to go in and help small businesses and medium businesses, sort of automate some of their workflows. And then really over the last, I'd say year or so, maybe a little over a year, there's been a big shift, obviously, to AI. And I think it's important for a couple of reasons, Alan. One is it's giving us the ability to take capabilities down into the SMB market at a price point that these companies can afford. Building a lot of custom applications, custom development, particularly, sort of over the pandemic timeframe of the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, everybody and their brother was hiring software developers, right? And they were very expensive. They're in some cases very difficult to work with. So what AI is doing for us now is it's enabling us to deliver things that would have been just absolutely cost prohibitive even a year ago or 18 months ago into that market. And so there's this huge amount of white space. No one's ever really paid attention to these guys. Right? I mean, they've all been like, yeah, we'd love to come build a bunch of really cool stuff to improve your business, but it's going to cost a lot of money to go do it. And we can't get a positive return on investment on that. Right. So that's one big factor in using AI. But the trick is picking the right use cases. If you pick the right use cases for artificial intelligence, you can do some very, very interesting things with it, right? If you pick the wrong use cases, it's probably not any more efficient than what we were doing before. So we work very closely with our customers to understand what their pain points are, what their challenges are, but also what the opportunities are in their industry. And then we work with them to down select that universe of possibilities down to, okay, these are the 5 that we can go deliver very cost effectively with a very positive return on investment for you. And we focus on those, right? So as this technology evolves, it gets more capable and capable seemingly every month. Our ability to kind of go down market with this and really give these guys some very, very powerful technology at a price point they can afford. We're just seeing a huge explosion in interest in doing that over the last 18 months or so.
Well, what are you seeing? So give me some ideas of like high ROI projects that might be generic, not to specific company, obviously customer, but like what are some of those use cases you're seeing that people are getting real value from?
Yeah, so I mean, they can be relatively straightforward. Like, so for instance, we've got customers that do professional services, and one of the challenges you've ever worked in a professional services company is getting people to put their time in, so you can go bill their time. So we've got companies that have multi-million-dollar billing backlogs because they can't get all their people to put in their time appropriately and do it correctly, right? So one of the solutions is a voice-enabled AI assistant where you can pick up your phone, you can pick up your tablet, you can do it on your computer. You say, hey, click on a button, click on an intelligent agent. I'd like to log some time with this customer. I spent 8 hours doing this. It needs to go in there and put in a note, by the way, that said, we accomplished these 3 tasks. That goes straight into this old sort of archaic, difficult to use billing system that they have. And poof, the billing goes right on through. So there's a tremendous amount of removing of the friction of some of these business processes where we can do that with AI. It's smart enough to know, though, if I say, hey, I'd like to log this for XYZ company, and it's really, WXY company or whatever. The agents are smart enough to go, hey, did you mean this? So they can deal with a lot of what I'll call sort of human errors or human challenges that we see in these types of systems. So it gives you a ton of flexibility, and they're not crazy difficult to do. They're not crazy difficult to manage once you've got them built. So that's an example of a use case that you can implement relatively quickly. It definitely requires some know-how, but doing that can change a business, right? If they can improve their billing rates and get rid of some of that billing backlog, that's potentially millions of dollars in increased revenue for them, and they don't have to write off as much of that.
So how much do you think it kind of feels like this? I'm still trying to figure out how this market's going to play out, right? It feels like there's a bunch of application providers that want to build, like pretty much maybe it's AI native, but it's pretty much a SaaS app, right? Like we're gonna have a way of doing, like I mentioned this, like I was reading about somebody who got funding who does field call analysis. So like every sales agent out in the field, they're recording their call, I guess, or their meeting, and it's going in and evaluating them, telling them how to do it better, and then creates like a dashboard for management to see how that's going, right? And all right, so that's sort of like AI native SaaS application. Now, of course, you could build that yourself, right? You could hire, have your MSP come in and do that. And so I'm curious, like, how this is going to play out over time. Is it going to be more like, will software costs come down so much that there's just no point? You could just tailor everything, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Or is that sort of like, hey, as long as this thing is like 50, $100 a month, I'm just going to buy whatever somebody else did because it's not even worth my time, right? If it's $50.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really interesting point that there's a lot of debate going on right now. So if you think about small and medium businesses, most of their ability to do these things is coming today through SaaS providers, right? So software as a service applications, right? And so the question is, at what point do those SaaS applications become so expensive that it's actually either easier or faster or cheaper to do it yourself or to get similar functionality? And so the my response to that is, if there's a problem that is generalizable enough to run across an entire industry or an entire set of industries, it's a more of a horizontal solution. I think those will still, I think they'll still have a place, right? I think they'll still be a market for doing that. We tend to focus on vertically specific problems, so industry focused problems, and then what we're finding is that it's hard to come up with a completely 100% reusable solution across these, because everybody uses different systems. Everybody has a little bit different way of doing things from a business process standpoint. So we found that the trick here is there's a fine balance between what is generalizable, truly generalizable. I think SaaS will still have a play there. It's the things that are either firm specific or industry specific or both, where I think you'll see a lot more development happening, at least in the small and medium business world.
Yeah. Although my sense is the days of like a larger organization paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to Salesforce are probably
I
for a
think they're
SaaS
numbered.
application. They're numbered, right? Because then, quickly
Yes.
it's like, hey, I can build an app that replicates 85% of these features that I actually use for, if that costs $10,000 at some point, you're going to go there. I guess the only other defensible thing I see in that realm is like if you're just collecting a ton of data and you're able to use it for benchmarking, or somehow that data then provides extra value to the customer, maybe there's some moat there that you can charge a little more for.
Yeah, I think so. I think I don't think we're going to see the death of SaaS. I mean, we've heard people say that, and we've heard. I don't think that's coming anytime soon. But I do think there's a white space market out there that is just been completely underserved over the last 20, 30 years in this SMB space. And the other thing is, there's kind of two ways to look at it. There's one way to look at it, where you say we're going to come in and sort of help your organization become more productive, do things more efficiently, et cetera. And that's largely a labor savings type of play. And then there's the play that I want to do something unique in my market. I want to go out there and build some things that will give me a unique competitive differentiator other than I can be a lower cost provider. And I think that's what's going to really take off. Today, most of what we do is the former, right? It's how do we come in, use AI and automation technologies to remove or reduce the number of repetitive, boring tasks that you do, and free up that time to go do higher value activities, right? That's 80% of what we do today. 20% is how do we go help you implement technologies that are going to give you a differentiator in the marketplace. But I see that 80-20 split becoming 60-40 and then 50-50, and right. So I think we're going to see the arrow move in that direction. I don't think it's going to move as rapidly as the technology is advancing. But I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll see that shift from sort of 80-20 to more like 50-50 for using this technology for differentiating yourself out in the marketplace.
Yeah, and my sense was before what you had is like maybe some leading edge companies were able to use these low code tools and no code tools. They were using the Airtables and the Notions and all this to kind of do part of this. But that didn't really penetrate the white space you're talking about, because that, there's a learning curve to those and people just don't want to deal, right?
Yeah, and that's the trick. Using AI, we're finding one of the big advantages of it is that it makes the whole process less friction. Well, there's less friction in the process, right? Because we can create these agents that are very easy to interact with. And I think we're starting to see a paradigm shift from the way I interact with my devices is with a mouse and a keyboard and a touch screen to much more voice enabled. I can talk to these things and I can tell them what I want them to go do, and they can go do it on my behalf. And they come back and they verify, yes, did I do the correct thing here, or am I about to do the correct thing? But that shift in the way we interact with machines, I think it's really big for the SMB world because it doesn't require a lot of training. I don't have to train you on the user interface of this application. I don't have to show you all the features, everything else. You're just talking to it. And that's very natural for us humans to do, is to talk to things. We talk to each other all the time. So I think it's going to open up a lot of horizons for these small and medium businesses. And the nice part about, the big advantage the small and medium businesses have is they can move quickly, right? So they have big competitors. There are plenty of industries we work in where there's a lot of small competitors, and then there's these 5, 10, 20 big guys. The big competitors, they're going to be able to go invest in the technology with a lot more money. They're going to be able to put a lot more wood behind that arrow. The problem is they can't move as fast typically, right? So they lose that agility and that flexibility. And that's the big advantage that these small and medium businesses have. They've just never been able to afford to do this stuff. So it's really a convergence of factors happening here that I think is very unique in the market.
So where do you see, so we're, the buzzword, and actually to your point, just real quick, I don't know if you saw the announcement with Johnny Ive's firm being bought by,
Yeah, I
um,
did. I did.
so like, and theory, but what people are speculating is that they're going to build
Yep.
some kind of device that you carry around that
Just gonna
interacts with
talk
you
to
through
it.
voice. Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that seems like the future of the interaction with ChatGPT, at least consumer wise, is going to be a voice interaction.
Yes.
Anyway, but so we hear a lot about the agentic web, which is like the catchphrase of
Buzzword bingo,
2025,
right?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I listen to some VC kind of podcasts and stuff like that. And the sense is like, well, first of all, how do you define an agent, right? So if I program a GPT to ask me a series of questions or take a persona or something like that, I guess that's an agent, right? But it's not going out and trying to log into a website and do something. So what are you seeing as like, and I've heard a lot of people saying like that second case, that agentic web, which I really think it is, where it's really going and doing actual tasks, is a little farther off than most people think. So where do you see the limits to that right now?
Well, so I don't think the limits, and I think you're bringing up a great topic here because, man, I wish I were Johnny Ive because, man, he got
6.5 billion.
six
Yeah.
and a half billion for a company that has no revenue and no shipping product, right? Like I
It's
want to figure out how
unbelievable.
I get into that market right there. But
Yeah.
I do think you're bringing up something important. So I think the word agentic and agents this is going to be the new digital transformation, right?
Right.
Like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I was like, oh, we're doing digital transformation, and it was all basically they just threw anything related to digital technology into this digital transformation bucket. So it became one of those almost meaningless terms, right? It can mean anything depending on the context you use it in. I think we're going to start to see the same thing with the agentic web, with agentic reasoning. I think it's going to be one of these very loosely defined categories, right? Where we're seeing the real play right now is not trying to build agents that will go off and book your flight and then make your hotel reservation for you and then rent the car and all that stuff, right? That to me is more sort of business to consumer type of agents that we're seeing. And I think I agree with you. That technology is not there yet. Okay. Despite what you'll read, despite what you hear, it's not there because it's a complicated problem, right? There's a lot of different variables that you have to deal with there. Where we're seeing people and organizations become very productive with agents today is building agents that can go out and execute business processes on their behalf, right? Or execute portions of business processes on their behalf. The difference between that, though, like we've had automation technologies for yeah, I don't know, 25, 30 years. But there were the set of things they could do was very limited in terms of what you could program them to do. Because there's plenty of business processes that require that human level intelligence or close to human level intelligence. But guess what? Now we've got that, right? Now we can put in this almost human level of intelligence into those business processes. So it opens up a whole set of agents that we can go build that can execute business processes. And we don't have to have a human in the loop for every one of those, right? Or every piece of those workflows. So I think that's what's expanding the horizons. That's where we're seeing the sort of practical applications today is, hey, I used to go out and I used to go download this file from this file server and then open it up in Excel and do this to it and then run some calculations and then send it to so-and-so. Well, great. We can automate that entire process in many cases, right? We can build an agent that you hit the button, you tell it what customer you're working with. It goes and pulls the appropriate files. It generates a research report for you. It sends the research report to an analyst who's then going to double check it. And then it goes off to a customer or whomever. That type of process is very, very powerful. And we're automating processes that previously, until a year ago, only humans could do those processes. So that's opening up the universe of possibilities by a 10x in terms of what you can do with automation with agents.
What are you seeing the limitations to that as? Like, where does that sort of where does it start choking and not being able to automate?
Well, so there's a couple of pieces to it. One is there's not really a big limitation in terms of the reasoning capabilities of these large language models. They can reason extremely well at this point. I mean, to very, very close to human level reasoning skills.
I say that if you use O3 from ChatGPT
Oh, it's
and even some of the
unbelievable.
newer Google, I think it's as smart as, I mean, that's artificial general intelligence to me. I can't imagine it
It's
being that much smarter.
No, and it doesn't need to be much smarter. And I've been telling people this for a long time. The limitation right now is not the technology, it's our imaginations for how to use the technology. So that's a big part of what we do with our customers because we go in and we show them this stuff, Alan. And, I'll be in a big conference room with people and I'll show them what's possible. And I mean, I might as well be like a magician sawing a woman in half in the conference room.
I
Right? I
love
mean,
that. So
they're just like,
true.
you what? So I feel like David Copperfield or some famous magician up there when I'm doing these things because the amount of knowledge and the amount of experience that SMBs have in this space is very, very limited in most cases. So I think the ability to have the reasoning capabilities, that's not the limiting factor. The limiting factor right now is giving these models the context they need to go do their jobs, right? Giving them the data they need to be able to integrate with different systems to go out and leverage tools to go accomplish the task. That's actually where the biggest limitation is. And so you've seen companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and now Microsoft, they're all supporting this protocol called MCP, which is Model Context Protocol. And a lot of people have likened that to it's like the USB-C connector for large language models. It lets you plug these things into data sources and to other systems and tools. And there's a consistent standard for being able to do that, right? That's actually the biggest limiting factor we see right now. Prior to MCP, it was really painful to go hook these models up to data and tools and so on and so forth. So with MCP, I think that's going to really open the floodgates in terms of what we can do and remove one of those barriers.
That's sort of like I heard, I think it was the CTO of Microsoft talking about that. And it's
Mhm.
almost like another HTML or whatever is under HTML, HTTP or something.
HTTP, yeah,
Yeah.
like it's a protocol you can use, yeah, and it's
Right.
becoming
So
very, very ubiquitous.
I heard somebody, was it him or is Ben Thompson who writes the Stratechery newsletter saying
Yeah,
that, like what he could see in the future is you don't even like when you're writing for the web, you're writing for MCP just to go right into a model. Like it's not for like the visual web that we're used to. And like I think that's going to be the agent transformation, right? Like once everybody writes in this common protocol, then it can go do all this stuff very easily, right?
oh no, 100%. I think it's a game changer. And we were excited when Anthropic came out with it. But it's like any standard. It's not any good unless other people support the standard. Unless it becomes a true standard, it doesn't do you a lot of good. So OpenAI a couple, 3 months ago said, all right, we're going to support this. Microsoft just this week announced that they're actually building MCP into Windows. Right. So this will be built not just into sort of the server side stuff, but also the client side devices, I think will be capable of interacting with large language models with and the tools and the applications that are on these devices will be able to do it both at a sort of server side data center level, but also on a device level. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
So give us a quick take on, since you guys are a managed service provider, you do some cyber defense kind of stuff too, right? So how do you see this all shaking out with, obviously now the threat levels go up, right? And the vectors that people are going to use are going to change, and your defenses, I guess, change as well. So how's that playing out on the IT side?
So I think there's three things that are happening, right? One is the biggest inhibitor we're seeing right now to AI adoption within small and medium businesses is a concern, not so much over security, but over privacy. They don't want their data accidentally leaking out into the market, right? They don't want new models being trained on data that they uploaded ChatGPT or whatever. That's probably the single biggest inhibitor to AI adoption in small and medium business. And in fact, it's actually in enterprises as well. We've seen enterprises, large, 5, 10,000 person companies have policies that say you can't use this stuff at work because they're so worried about it. And I think they're right to be worried about it. It's actually relatively easy to prevent that from happening. But if you don't have an institutional policy to do it, you can accidentally leak some very confidential information or very private information out to the rest of the world. So I think there's that, right? So anytime we work with a customer, that is the very first thing we do, and we do it continuously throughout the life cycle with them, is to make sure that we have a security and privacy first policy. If you don't do that, no one's going to trust you to make this happen for them, regardless of the benefits, right? That can be catastrophic for small companies. Let's say I'm a small accounting firm and somehow my customers' data, financial data gets leaked. That could put me out of business almost overnight, right? So there are those concerns, and I think some of them are legitimate, which is why we tell people don't try to do this yourself. Okay, I know it looks easy, but there's considerations you're not taking into account, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece of it is if you think about what's happening in the market today from a cybersecurity standpoint, what we're seeing is organized crime, hackers going after much, much smaller businesses. And the reason they're doing that now, we've just seen this in the last 18 months to 2 years. They're going after these small and medium businesses because now they can afford to, right? Now they can use AI to go penetrate the defenses of a lot of these small and medium businesses. And they can do it by building agents that go in, ironically enough, and hack these guys. So we're seeing the cyber criminals come down market very, very rapidly. We've probably seen more attempted security breaches in our customer base over the last year than we probably saw in the last 3 or 4 years. So there's definitely a big move down market by the cyber criminals. And if you think about it, I mean, and it's almost ridiculous to talk like them or about them like this, but they're businesses, right? They're just illegal businesses. So they look at things like profit margins, right? Well, if it costs me $500 to go hack this account, I'm only going to get $600 out of it. That's not a very good gross margin, and so I'm not going to go after those guys, right? All right, I know it's laughable to talk about.
I should
organized
be
crime that
coaching
way.
them. Like if you're not getting at least a
Exactly.
50% gross
Oh,
margin,
yeah, at
what are
least
you
a
doing?
50%
Right,
gross margin. Don't bother with
right.
those guys, right? So AI has changed the economics of cybercrime. And we've really had to go to our customer base and say, hey guys, we've got to implement more stringent security measures for you. This isn't a joke anymore. This isn't something where they're like, who's going to come after my 50-person asphalt business? Well, let me tell you something, a ton of people, and they can do it from anywhere in the world. And so I think that's the second trend we're seeing in terms of AI and cybersecurity. The third trend we're seeing is that if you look at companies that are out there like Microsoft, I think has done an excellent job of this. They've gone out and they've built an AI platform that already has all of your data in it. And they've done a very, very good job of designing their M365 platform that has all your OneDrive and SharePoint and all that. And they've really locked that down well, right? It's all in one place. There's not a big risk of it getting out of your Microsoft tenant. So I think you're going to see more and more of that. You're going to see more and more companies like Microsoft and Google, et cetera, that deliver all this office productivity type of functionality, saying, hey, look, if you want to be safe, you need to be in one platform. And by the way, that platform runs in our cloud. It's secure. We've worked out how to make it all secure, so you don't have to worry about it, Mr. or Mrs. Small, medium business owner. So I think that's going to be a bigger and bigger trend. The only downside of that trend is that it prevents a lot of these guys from using best of breed tools, right? If you want to stay in that platform, you got to use their stuff. And so I think we'll see a balance eventually struck between that. But for right now, that's becoming more and more of a driving force around security.
Two things on that are interesting. One is that same philosophy applies to if like, to what extent are you going to see Microsoft be the main AI drive for most companies? So if you consolidate everything on Teams and you get rid of your Slack and you have all your knowledge base and your productivity software in one thing, then that obviously becomes like a data source, right? That can be used to, with the AI through RAG or whatever it is. And does Microsoft then become sort of like the main AI agent for most companies, or is that not going to play out that way?
Well, I think it's going to depend, Alan, on a couple of things, right? One is if you looked at Microsoft's AI stack even 6 months ago, it was not great. Just going to be honest with you, right? And we're a big Microsoft partner, and I don't say that in a mean way. They just weren't there yet. I think what we saw at their Build conference this week is a maturing of their technology, right? They are getting better and better at this, and they're providing more and more functionality. So I think that is certainly Microsoft's goal, right? They know that if they can capture that part of the market, that's a part of the market that they'll keep for a long, long time, and they'll be able to charge premiums for giving you that entire ecosystem. So I think Microsoft's trying to do that. I know that Google's trying to do that as well, and there will probably be others. Now, I don't think Microsoft is going to be a big player in the large language model creation world, right? I think there's too much competition there. Obviously, they invested tens of billions of dollars in OpenAI. But what's good is, I've seen a surprising amount of willingness from them to adopt all kinds of large language models, right? I think they announced this week there's over 190 different large language models that are accessible in their Azure AI Foundry, including Grok, right? They added Grok 3 and Grok 3 Mini this week. They have a lot of open source models in there. They even host DeepSeek, which is great because it's a very powerful model that's relatively inexpensive to use. So I think Microsoft's going to become kind of that aggregator rather than the company that is trying to go out there and innovate within the large language model ecosystem. I think they're going to partner for a lot of that technology, right? And then the question becomes, well, okay, are they really going to be able to effectively compete with Google? They've got Gemini. They've spent a lot of money, and Gemini's quite good now. It was kind of garbage 6 months ago. Like I wouldn't use Gemini 6 months ago. And Gemini 2.5 Pro came out again this week at their conference. It's amazing. It's a very, very powerful model, right? I'm a big ChatGPT user myself. I like their models. I know how to use them very, very well. But I've been using Gemini more and more over the last, let's call it 3 or 4 months. I've been impressed. So I think Google might have an advantage there in the sense that they've actually got their own set of large language models, and they're quite good. That may be a distinguishing factor that they have from Microsoft. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the market, though. I don't know where it's going to go.
So Alex, here's my radical prediction. When I started working in '03 for ChatGPT, and to some extent Gemini's getting there, and that's more on the the pro ChatGPT plan. So it's different if you have the $20 plan, you don't have access. But I started thinking, why am I using productivity apps? Like, why am I going back to Word or Docs or Excel or Sheets why can't I just, because like the formatting now in ChatGPT at these higher models is beautiful. Like it's better than I put it into Word. Now I'm messing with all this stuff and it looks like crap. And I'm like, well, why can't I get collaboration, document management, everything in ChatGPT? Why do I even need the productivity software? So I think there's a step where we just get rid of that whole stack at some point.
I think it's possible. I think the real trick though is making sure that it's got access to all of your data. It's got the context to do things, right? So OpenAI last week announced, I think this is a very, very smart move that, and I'm assuming you've used deep research on OpenAI, the deep research function, right? Like that's game changing, right? I mean, if you haven't, if you're listening to this thing and you haven't used deep research, go try it out. It's unbelievable, right? So what I do a lot of is I use deep research. It produces a nice 30-page report, but honestly, I don't have time to read 30-page reports these days. So I take it, and to your point, I throw it into an AI app called Gamma. Gamma is a slide deck builder, and it's amazing slide deck builder, right? This thing builds beautiful slide decks in a couple of minutes. So I take these deep research reports, I copy them straight out of ChatGPT, paste them into Gamma, hit a button, and boom, it produces 20 slides that I can consume in 15 minutes rather than spending an hour or two reading this giant deep research report. And so to your point, absolutely. I've spent 25 years honing my PowerPoint skills. Okay. Like I'm really good at PowerPoint. And I don't even use PowerPoint anymore, man. And it pisses me off because I'm like, man, I invested all this time learning how to produce beautiful slide decks. And now I don't ever produce beautiful slide decks anymore. The AI does. So I think that trend is happening for sure.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the more that's one of these realizations I had, like, just like, I don't know, it was like 7 o'clock at night working in ChatGPT. And I was like, oh my God, like, why? And I was trying to cut and paste something. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to happen in the future, right? So
No, you'll just say, hey, great, you've made the deep research report. Now go build me a beautiful slide deck out of it. And bam, it'll build you the beautiful slide deck or make the spreadsheet out of it. So yes, I can definitely see that coming for sure.
well, it's so super cool to talk about AI, geek out on AI stuff. I could do that all day, but we have taken enough of your time today. And so, Alex, if people want to reach out, learn more about your guys' services, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, and you can just go to netsurit.com. It's netsurit.com. And you check out what we do. And we love to hear from you because we've had a lot of success working with small and medium businesses to do these things, really transform their business. And we're just so excited about it. This is
That's cool stuff.
the technology is game changing, man. It really is. But
Yeah.
thank you for having me on today.
Of course, Alex. It was great. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan.
You've been listening to the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alan Pentz. For more insights on mastering the new game, follow @apentz, that's APENTZ on X, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, in today's world, you don't follow the rules, you write them.